Hello and welcome back to photowalkthrough.com. This is tutorial 6, chapter 2, and today we're working on this seascape scene taken in Weston-super-Mare. And as you'll recall, this tutorial is meant to recap some of the techniques I used in tutorial 1, which was produced as flash videos, and that tutorial is still available on the photowalkthrough.com website by clicking the video tutorials link at the top of the webpage. Before I get started, I'd like to say a quick thank you to all those people who've been emailing me since we started the show a few months back. It's been wonderful hearing that the show is useful to people, and I especially love seeing the images you folks have produced. Remember that you can contact me either on Flickr, where my username is FloydUK, or you can email me at photowalkthrough@gmail.com. Also, we've had a great response to Spitfire Lass's Rose photo and the segment I did on chromatic aberration last week. So if you have any quick questions that you'd like me to cover, then please let me know and I will see if I can answer them on the show. I'm really keen to get talking to you guys and encourage a bit of photographic community, and that's what the Flickr group is all about. So if you're not already signed up at Flickr, I really recommend it, and we have the Photo Walkthrough Flickr group there, and anyone is welcome to join and post some of their pictures. I tried to comment on everything there eventually, and there are some other regular posters like Connor, Derek, Canon 350D in hand, Freefall, Tucker, and a few others. They're a great bunch, so join in, and I'm sure you'll get some useful feedback on the pictures you post there. Now, before I forget, next week's show might be a bit late. I'm going to be away on holiday between Friday and Wednesday. I'm going to record a show ahead of time, and if I can get internet access while I'm away, I will post it on Monday, but I can't make any promises. So please bear with me if next week's show doesn't turn up on time. I promise I'll tell you all about it when I get back, but I can't tell you now because it's a secret surprise for someone where we're going. So let's get on with processing the shot. We left the image last week looking like this. Like this even, which is almost exactly how it was shot. What we did last week was we used Neat Image to clean up some of the noise, and then we did a spot edit to remove a bird. Now today I'd like to start with the ground, which looks really gloomy. As I said last week, this isn't really a shot I'm too proud of. I actually don't like what I did with the exposure, and initially I discarded this shot without processing it up. But this show's all about making more of your photos, and this is one where I came back to the shot later and saw something in there to work with. So looking at the ground, it needs a lot more light. So let's start with a lightening layer. Once again, I'm just bringing back my Photoshop tools by pressing the Tab key. So here you can see there's the Neat Image layer, there's the Spot Edit layer that we did last week, and the lightening layer is simply a curves layer. So once again, this button down here adds an adjustment layer, and I'm going to choose curves, and that's going to make a new curves layer, and it pops up this curves dialog here. And as usual, I'm just going to press OK on that. I'm going to do nothing to the curves layer. I'm just going to leave it as a layer that makes no difference at all. If you turn it on and off, no change. And I'm going to set the blending mode to screen. And if you watch what that did on the main image there, let me turn that layer on and off, you can see that that brightens the image quite a lot. Now, typically I would bring these in at 50% opacity. So with the curves layer selected, we're going to drag the opacity slider down to the middle there, 50%. Something I haven't mentioned for a little while, a lot of you will already know this, but remember in CS2 you can click on the word opacity and drag left and right. They call that a scrubby slider, and I think that's incredibly useful. That works all over the place. Almost everywhere in Photoshop you can click on the word and drag instead of having to do the two-click thing. And actually I find that a lot easier. So pretty useful little feature in there. Now remember, curves layers and pretty much all the adjustment layers come automatically with a layer mask, and the layer mask is just like a stencil. Sorry for covering ground that we've covered here before, but remember this is supposed to be a recap of the stuff from tutorial 1. So a layer mask is just like a stencil. The way it works is that anywhere that's white in the layer mask will show the effect of that layer, and anywhere that's black in the layer mask will hide the effect of that layer. So this layer, as you've seen, if I turn it on off, brightens the whole image up. That's because the entire layer mask you can see here is white. If I was to fill that entire layer mask with black, and the way I do that is click on the layer mask, and then you can see down here my colours are white and black. I've got white as my foreground, black as my background, and the way you fill with the background colour is to do Control Delete, or on a Mac that would probably be Command Delete. So Control Delete fills with the background colour, and then I'm going to use a gradient tool, which is this tool here, and I'm going to choose, if you click up here, sorry, let me do that again, gradient tool. Up here you can see which gradient we've got selected. There's various different types of gradient. This first one here is just the regular linear gradient. It goes from one colour to another. If you click on that button there, you can actually see a bunch of different gradients available to us. We've got foreground to background, foreground to transparent, black to white, and so on. There's a whole bunch of regularly set up. That you'll find that there's a load of those available right from the start. The one that we want in this case is foreground to transparent. And I'm going to choose OK, and in this case my foreground is white, which is what I need. And I'm going to just draw, I'm going to hold down the Shift key, I'm going to draw a line vertically like that, and if I hold down the Shift key, it constrains it to each of these 8 directions. If I let go of the Shift key, I can choose any angle I like, but Shift key very useful in cases like this where what I want to do is brighten the ground. And what I'm going to do is I'm just drawing a little line across the horizon there. And if I let go on that, you can see that the ground brightened up. And what it's done, if I press Shift click on the curves layer, you can see that turns that layer mask on and off. If I Alt click on the curves layer, you can see the layer mask itself. What that gradient has done, we had a black background already, and I've drawn a line vertically, so it goes from the start of the gradient, which you can see is white here, to the end of the gradient, which you can see is transparent here. So everything at the start of the line was white, everything at the end of the line was transparent. With our already black background, that gives us black at the top, white at the bottom, with a grey gradient in between. So Alt click on the adjustment layer, the layer mask again, so we can go back to our normal image. There's a couple of really useful keystrokes here, by the way. I mean, I've just mentioned 2. Alt clicking on the layer mask shows you the layer mask. Shift clicking on the layer mask turns the layer mask on and off. And then Alt shift clicking gives you like a quick mask mode. So you can see the red areas are the areas that are masked out, and the non-red areas are the areas that are showing. And you can just about see that there's a gradient in between there. And if you wanted to, you could then grab the paintbrush tool and just painted white there. Let me just undo that. Press X to switch my foreground and background colour. You could paint some black into there if I wanted to, but I don't want to do that. So Control Z to undo the first one, Control Alt Z to undo the second one. On a Mac, that's Command Z or Command Option Z. That's one of my favourite new keystrokes. I think I've mentioned this before, but Control Z toggles you back and forth between the last 2 history states. So that's undo and redo. And then Control Alt Z goes back and back and back and keeps on going backwards. So very, very useful. Right, so Alt Shift click on my layer mask to go back to the regular view, and that's our ground brightened up. Just turning that on and off. I think that's probably a pretty good start in terms of the brightness. I'm just going to change the layer name, and I did that by just double clicking on the word. So just double clicking on the word in the layer palette here. Something else that I want to quickly show you. I've shown you making actions before, but I'm going to do it again because this is something I use all of the time. I have let me drag in the actions palette, and you can see I've got John's actions here, and within my actions I've got lighten, darken, contrast, and I've got a couple of things for making hard light layers, soft light layers, and so on. So I have those all set up as keyboard shortcuts, and you can see here lighten is on F5, darken is on F6, contrast is on F7, and those are things that I just, when I'm working up an image for the first time and I've got ideas of what I want to do to it, I've got a few quick shortcuts that I can just say, how does it look if I lighten it? How does it look if I darken it? And when I hit those buttons, it creates one of these lightening layers if it's the lighten button, or a darkening layer if it's a darken button. So I'm just going to quickly run through again, setting up an action that does that, and I really recommend that these are things that you set up as quick keyboard shortcuts. So let's go into a new demo collection. That's from a previous tutorial there. So let's go into my demo actions, and I'm going to let me turn that layer off so that we can see the effect of this. Remember, when you're creating an adjustment layer, the layer that you want to have selected already is the one below where the adjustment layer needs to be created. When you create an adjustment layer like this, it creates the adjustment layer above the one you've got selected. So right, making a new action. In the actions palette, we have this button down here, little sticky note looks like a sticky note alert. That's the new action button. So if I click that, it's going to ask me for a name, and in this case I'm going to say lighten. And that's now created us a new action in the demo group. And the little red light's lit up already to show me that it's now recording. And everything I do from here will be recorded until I press the stop button here. So what I want to do is make a new lighten layer. So adjustment, new adjustment layer, curves. I'm just going to press OK on that with no change. This is exactly what I did before. And then with the curves layer selected, I'm going to set the blending mode to screen. And then I'm going to drag the opacity down to 50%. And rename the layer to lighten. That's all the steps I would normally take for creating a lightning layer. If I now press stop on the actions palette, you can see that all those steps, it's not very easy to see with a window that small, all those steps that I've been recording in this lighten layer have been saved within the demo group. That lighten layer now, if I get the properties on that, where did it go? Action options. Here we go. In the action options, we can set a function key for that. Now, I already have the function key F5 set to lighten, but if I wanted to, I could choose F5 there, and you can say if you want it to be Shift F5 or Control F5, and that will then, when you press that key, so in my case, if I was to press F5, it would run a similar action, but in this case, I'll select the action in the action palette here and press the play button. And if you watch up here, we've got the lighten layer selected, so what this will do is make another lighten layer just above that. So if I press play, takes a second, does all those little things I did, and a moment from now, there we go, another lighten layer. So that's a really useful thing to do. I recommend having those quick function keys set up for lightening, darkening, adding contrast. Now the other thing I haven't mentioned, remember these, we're recapping a little bit here, but I've mentioned this before, but in these blending modes, we've got 4 here that will darken the image, we've got 4 here that will lighten the image, and we've got 7 here that will add contrast to the image. So when you're making a lighten layer, we've seen that screen is the one to choose. If you're making a darken layer, multiply would be the one to choose. So if I just choose multiply for that, instead of lightening the ground, it's darken the ground. If you want to increase contrast, overlay is probably the best one to choose initially. So you can see that if I turn that layer off, the ground looking a bit muddy, that increases contrast, makes it even more gloomy, but you can see that it has added contrast to it. So those are your basic 3. Those are your basic darken, lighten and overlay. And the reason that I have those come in at 50% opacity is that once I've made that layer, if it's too much, I can drag it down from 50%, or if it's too little, I can drag it up from 50%. And I think in this case, probably I will drag it up a little bit from 50% up to, say, 70%. And what I'm trying to achieve here, I think we're done with my actions palette, so I'll drag the action palette out of view. What I'm trying to achieve here with this image just at the moment is I'm trying to get the sky and the ground to similar levels of brightness. The reason for that is that I know when I come to do my black and white conversion, which is the next step, that I want to have good levels of light and dark tones, which I'm going to then push the contrast up on. So you really want all your tones to be sort of centered around the sort of 50% grey mark, so that the darker things that are below the 50% go darker, and the lighter things that are above the 50% go brighter, and you end up with a nice even tonal balance across the image. This is really an experience thing, but just trying to give you an insight into the thought process of what I'm doing here. So somewhere in that region is right for the lightening of the ground. Now the next step I'm going to choose is to do a black and white conversion. Now, here's something useful. I think I did mention this before, but I'm going to cover it again. You need to go down to one of your bitmap layers. I can't do this. If I choose the lighten layer, then it won't work. You need to go down to a layer that's got some image in it. So in this case, the first layer down that's got some image in it actually is the spot edit layer, because that's a regular bitmap layer. This is an adjustment layer. So this is adjusting colours and things. This has actually got pixel data in it, and in this case the spot edit actually just takes out a bird that's just there. It's a very, very small amount of pixel data, but it is the top pixel data layer. Now, what I'm doing here, I'm going to press Control 1, Control 2, Control 3, just in that order, and on the Mac that would be Command 1, Command 2 or Command 3, and what that's showing me is that's the red channel, that's the green channel, and that's the blue channel, and that is exactly the same as you could achieve if I just the button to the left of the one, which I've mentioned before on an American keyboard, is the tilde key. On my British keyboard it's the backquote key, and I have no idea what it is on any other European keyboards, but that key to the left of the one, I believe, if you press Control on that on most keyboards, will get you back to the RGB channel. But if you look at your channels palette, which is usually out by default, but if it's not, then go to Window, Channels, and it will get you this view where you've got at the very top channel here is the RGB channel, and you can see here it's showing me Control tilde as the keystroke to get to that. Control 1 shows me the red channel, Control 2 shows me the green channel, Control 3 shows me the blue channel. You don't need to be in the channels palette to see that, but I just wanted you to see what that was doing. Now the reason I'm doing that is that I want to see where the information is. If I'm about to do a black and white conversion on this, and what I'm really interested in is where are the tones that I like, where is the detail, and where is the noise, and I want to generally get rid of noise, and I want to generally make use of detail. So the red channel there has got reasonably good tones in it. The ground and the sky look pretty good. I've got a little bit of darker tone on the boats, which is nice, with a nice light sea background behind them. These sand piles look a little bit grey, but I'll sort that out. The sky looks a little over bright, but it looks a little over bright in every channel. The only channel where it doesn't look over bright actually is the blue channel, and you can see we've got some blown out areas here that I will deal with next. But the basically the blue channel is going to be the noisiest channel. Blue is always noisy, and it's to do with, I believe, the way the camera works, but you can see quite a lot of noise on the ground. If I go to the green channel, the noise is not so pronounced, and in the red channel even less pronounced. So in this case what I'd like is, I think I'm going to take 50% of that red channel, which has got nice general tones, and 50% of that green channel, which has got some nice detail. Just going in here I can see some good detail in the sand, I can see some good detail in the boats and the sea behind it, and the tones in the green channel aren't bad either. So that's my red, green, blue channels. I think I've decided what my basic plan is. I'm now going to, I've just done Control tilde again to get back to the red, green, blue. I'm choosing my lightning layer because I want to now make another adjustment layer above that lightning layer, which is going to be the channel mixer. And we get this dialog up, where the first thing I'm going to do, this is a standard practice for a black and white conversion. There are lots of ways of doing a black and white conversion, by the way. This just happens to be the channel mixer is the way I tend to do it. If you tick the monochrome box in the bottom corner here, you can see that's made it go monochrome. And what it's showing us is that the source data for this monochrome image at the moment is 100% from the red channel, nothing from the green channel, and nothing from the blue channel. So if I drag the red channel down to 50%, we're now only getting 50% from the red channel and nothing from anywhere else. So of course the image has gone darker because we've got no pixel data from anywhere else. If I drag the green channel up to 50%, we're back up to about the right sort of brightness for the image, and we've now got 50% data from red, 50% data from green, and you can preview that on and off. You can see that that's reasonably faithful black and white conversion of it, and hopefully we've got enough detail in here for our next step of our processing, which is to do some work on the detail of the image. So I'm going to press OK on that. And apologies for this for being a little bit of a short show, but I'm going to call it a day there because I've got another show to record, ready for next week when I'm going to be away on holiday. So I'm going to call it a day there. Thank you very much for listening. I will catch you next Monday, I hope. Thanks a lot. Goodbye.